Quad 6.6. So, in past videos, I have made it pretty clear that for whoops, my daily driver, which I absolutely love, is a build largely based around the WeBleed Hummingbird race spec. So using the race spec board and then using the 0702 race spec motors, and then changing up a couple things where I'm using the WeBleed Cockroach V3 frame, the regular one, not the AF frame, which is still super light but has better damping of noise, with an old WeBleed camera, BI camera, and that setup I absolutely love been flying. And there's also recently been testing from Chris Rosser with thrust testing that have validated my opinion of those WeBleed motors, showing that they have close to best in class thrust and efficiency, and only coming up a little short as compared to the 40,000 kV WeBleed Happy Model based motors, and showing slightly superior responsiveness to those motors. So not only do they feel better to me, feel smoother in general compared to everything else I've flown before, up to date. Why would I go about spending $50 on the motors that you're seeing fly here? Why would I go and spend almost $50 for a set of motors I don't really want, definitely don't need, but just had to buy? So yes, these are the full 40,000 kV WeBleed FPV Trash Magic motors. Yes, I got lucky there. Sweet. So these are the 40,000 kV WeBleed motors, so that's the highest kV. Because of the difference in how Happy Model measures their kV, this is the equivalent of like the WeBleed 30,000 kV, similarly Beta FPV 30,000 kV. And I just had to get these motors. And when I put them on, lo and behold, they are a little noisier, like I remember Happy Model products being in general. We'll see how they hold up after a time. But the reason I bought them is because once I get an idea in my head, once I have a question in my head, I just can't let it go. Even though I don't have to answer it for any like practical, rational purpose, I just have to answer it because the question is stuck in my head. And that question was, why do I love the control around the hover point of those WeBleed motors so much? Why do I find them so easy to fly? Because it was counterintuitive to me. Normally you think, hey, if I go to a lower kV, I'm going to have more control around the low end of the throttle. I'm going to have more resolution. I'm going to have easier time on the hover point. And lo and behold, the most powerful motors I fly, highest kV I've flown with those WeBleed motors, I felt the opposite happen, which is I had so much more control around the hover point, felt so much more comfortable, and loved those motors. And the only way I could answer that of whether, hey, this is something unique about the WeBleed motor, or I could get a very similar performing motor, i.e. the WeBleed 40,000 kV, as far as the thrust stand, I could get those and I could fly them. And guess what? It's the high kV. The high kV makes these motors so much easier to fly around the hover point. It's freaking wild. It's nothing special about the WeBleed motor. It's just, I've been flying too low of a kV and before those WeBleed motors, and that's been throwing off the low end of the hover point, which is wild. So that's what I'm showing you here, is that Trash Magic Part 2. You know, if you can tell, can you hear the cicada sound? That's what it sounds like to me. They just sound so dirty, so crunchy. I don't know. Brand new motors, and they sound awful. Let's bring that in. That's a long flight time. See what that rebounds to. 3.5. So 430 with a little bit of crashes there. Let's pop in new motor. I do think I am finding slightly longer flight time than the WeBleed motors. I could be wrong. I'm getting some. I unfortunately burnt out my twin quad, so I've got a new one coming. I've got another Hummingbird race spec coming with the, so I'll do some back-to-back, but why wait for the proper back-to-back testing when you can go ahead and make bold statements that you will shortly retract after you go and fly back-to-back. But anyways, what I think I'm seeing with these motors is very similar performance in the air. To me, I think they do feel a touch, just a very minor touch more sluggish than the NubiDrone motors. I think the NubiDrone motor is still the fire. I still love those the best. But I do think on these Trash Magic 40,000 kV WeBleed motors, you get slightly better flight time. And, you know, the power is, you know, as good or maybe a little bit better. Other rationale, so okay, why do I get these motors? Well, part of it is I wanted to build a basher loop. So I like flying like this in general. I fly kind of like a racing sort of lines. And this is generally pretty benign on the quads. You know, you have like bumps and stuff, but it's not awful. But I wanted a quad to kind of work on a little bit more of, you know, sort of freestyle flying indoors. And I figured I needed a basher. And WeBleed has come out with the motor bells for those 702s with the 1.5 millimeter shaft. And so I think those will be nice to be able to have sort of a basher quad where I can throw those on. And supposedly there's going to be some new props coming besides the gem fans. And I agree with Ciati that the gem fan has sort of been left behind. The other thing I discovered finally is the new HQ props. So I am very late to the party on those because I kept waiting for them to be all in stock at the same time from Pyrodrone. I never could. But because I was buying these WeBleed motors, I'm like, oh, well, WeBleed's got them all in stock. So I finally got the ultralight tri-blade in the high pitch and low pitch. I got the bi-blade, and I've tested them all. And I think my quick recommendation is the HQ ultralight tri-blade in the low pitch. I find like it's sort of a worthless prop. It doesn't do anything for me in terms of being special. It feels kind of lazy, and I think the only thing it's really good for is maybe if you are newer to more powerful motors and you want to just like tame the thing down, maybe it works for you that way. But I find them lazy, and you don't really pick up flight time on them. Now, the tri-blades in the high pitch, good prop. I think excellent racer prop. I can see why people like them. They feel super locked in, like you're on rails. But the downside of them is they feel like they're on rails. They are not quite as responsive. And my favorite of the new HQ stuff is what I have on here. These are the bi-blades. These things I absolutely love. They were a handful when I first put them on. But once I got the feel for them, they are so responsive. Like, if you miss the line barely and you need to adjust it, these things will absolutely do it. They just will absolutely do everything you ask for them in terms of like last minute tweaks and adjustments. And I love these bi-blade props. Love them, love them, love them. They are basically like a lighter, better version of the Azis cut down to bi-blade. And so these are fantastic, and you don't have to cut them down, and they're a little bit lower, lighter. But anyways, this battery's done. Until next time, cheers.